Now look, before you start judging me and my personal manga taste, I read this for you, the people, so that you don't have to. Hello all of my otaku friends, my name is Prophet Otaku, and welcome back to my channel for this March manga reading log. This month I read 50 volumes, which in the grand scheme of things, I'm just really underwhelmed with how I read this month. But this was a really interesting month, a month of disappointments, so with that being said, let's get started. As always, before we get started with the video, no spoilers. I will never tell you what specifically happens in a volume. If it's a new series, I want to tell you if it's something you should put on your radar. If it's an ongoing series, is it continuing to develop nicely? And if it's a series that I finished, did the ending leave a good taste in my mouth? So this first section here are going to be all the spicy takes, all the dropped manga or series that I sold off. These are just things that personally I didn't really like, but it may be some of your favorites. And first up on the guillotine is the seinen classic, one I know I'm going to get in trouble for, and that is Goodnight Punpun. I read all 13 volumes this month. So I gave this manga a 6 out of 10. I understand the message that Inio Asano was trying to make with this manga, but I didn't necessarily agree with that message and how that message came across. I think Asano and I have very different viewpoints of depression, so to see what Punpun did and his actions just really left a bad taste in my mouth just because I don't agree with them. From an objective standpoint, I had a huge problem with the storytelling of this manga. There were several elements in this story that just seemed completely unnecessary and they went nowhere. And while I was reading these parts, the only thing I could think about is I just want to keep going with Punpun. I don't really care about these people. But with that being said, it was a very interesting read. The artwork is absolutely top notch. And of course, I read it in like 10 days. So obviously I was intrigued and invested in the story. It's not one that I would bother to reread again to see if I would get any more enjoyment out of it. It's just personally something I didn't attach with, and I know that is a debatable thing. Blue Tempest said it the best. You either love this manga or you hate this manga, and I don't necessarily hate it, but I didn't enjoy it. Next up in this section are the first 2 volumes of the Armpit manga, and I'll put the name here because I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. For those of you who didn't know, we had such a cultured piece of manga in the industry. This story is about a high school girl. One day she's on the subway, she puts her arm up and her armpit's showing, and then there's a middle school boy who's looking straight into the armpit and he likes it, and so it's her teasing him. It's a rom-com series. There's a cast of characters. It's a slice of life episodic type of thing. There's no overarching storyline, and there's just not enough substance there for me to keep going. At the beginning I thought it was really cute. It was kind of funny. This boy, I just felt really bad for him because he just can't control his emotions. But then in the second volume it just took a really weird turn, which of course is going to take a weird turn because this is more of like a fetish manga, but it just went way too far and I was like, okay, we're done. I think I gave it a 5 out of 10. I'm glad that I tried it out. I mean, obviously I wasn't going to keep going with this because it's just cookie cutter, same old rom-com type of thing, but you know what? It's something. Next up here are the first 4 volumes of Scum's Wish. This is by the same mangaka who's part of the duo that's doing Oshinoko. This story follows 2 teenagers who like different adults in their life, but obviously they can't get with them, so they find sexual solace within each other. It's a really dark and messy drama, but it's not a good kind of messy. The story just runs around in circles. You have all these different branches of character development and character stories, and none of them really seem to tie in together, and it just becomes this conglomerate of a mess. These stories also don't seem to go anywhere. It's one of those things where you take 2 steps forward but 3 steps back, and it's a very frustrating thing to read as a reader. Honestly, the setup to this story and the story premise itself is really interesting. It's just the execution was not there. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Nothing too special, but if you are intrigued and interested in reading this manga, I read it on the Crunchyroll manga app. It is available digitally to read. The next manga series I decided to drop is The Girl I Like Forgot Her Glasses Volume 2. You know, I really did want to like this series. It's a cute rom-com episodic slice of life thing with a girl who continuously forgets her glasses, but honestly I was just bored. The big complaint I had after volume 1 is I just feel like it was going to get really boring really fast. It's going to be the same old shtick, and volume 2 completely delivered on that opinion. It was so boring. So with that, I decided to cut my losses. I dropped it and I sold it off. 4 or 5 out of 10, not worth your time. Another manga that I read that I probably should have read when I did, it's Avant-Garde Yumiko by Shuzo Ishimi. So this manga is about a girl who's going into high school and she's infatuated with a phallic part of a male body. And this one shot goes into the discovery of this thing through the art club. So here's a really funny story. It's a 5-chapter one shot, and I decided, hey, I'm gonna read this on my iPad while I'm donating blood. So I pull it up on my iPad and I'm just scrolling along. We get to chapter 3, some things start to happen. I go, whoa, I just can't read this in public. I went ahead and finished the rest at home. Look, this is nothing special. I gave it a 5 out of 10. I understand the message Shuzo Ishimi was trying to portray with trying to discover your sexuality. It was just weird. So the next manga that I tried and decided to drop, and it was part of my shopping vlog with my friends who can find the worst rated manga. I'll leave a little card in the upper right hand corner, but it is I'm a behemoth, an S-ranked monster, but mistaken for a cat, I live as an elf girl's pet. And look, it's exactly what you think it's about. It's about this cat who's actually a really strong monster. He teams up with this elf girl and they go into dungeons and make money. Honestly, the only good thing about this manga was the art. I like the character design, I like the action, and I like the backgrounds, but man, they just really forgot how to write a good story. I didn't get attached one bit to the characters, and the story was just so shallow. There was no overarching goal presented in the first volume, and it really detached me from the story. Vincent, I guess you did your job really well because you did find a really bad manga. In the last manga that I read in this disappointing manga section is Yu-Gi-Oh! I read the first volume of this 3-volume omnibus. Look, I'm gonna put some context for you so that you understand why I had some issues with this first volume. The first 9 chapters of Yu-Gi-Oh! Don't actually dive into the card game because the card game hadn't existed yet. So Yu-Gi-Oh! As an entity was a really edgy, dark manga about Yu-Gi playing these really bad games, and there were really bad rewards for these people at the end. It's really dark, it's really messed up. Yugi's kind of a jerk, and honestly, it was just such a weird first volume to ingest. I didn't necessarily enjoy it. I'm not dropping it. Look, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just such a big part of my childhood. I know once I get into the card game, I'm really gonna enjoy it, but I was just really thrown off by the first volume, so definitely a warning there. This next section here are gonna be all the larger sets of manga that I started or completed or got up to date with. First up, we have Gakuen Babysitters, volume 23 and 24. I don't need to talk about Gakuen Babysitters anymore. It's my top 2 manga of all time. Go ahead and check out my top 10 video if you want to hear my thoughts on it. It was phenomenal. It tugged at my heartstrings and I just love the babies. Next up is a very surprising 2-volume shoujo beat series. It's Kenka Bancho Otome Loves Battle Royale. So the story follows a girl who helps out her brother by dressing up as a boy and taking his place at a school for delinquents. And thus starts this boys harem about her trying to make it in this ragtag school. I really love this 2-volume series. I love the story, and I love how the first chapter gave us everything we could want. We get the story, it's very simple. We get all of the characters, we get introduced to them, and we get a little bit of backstory in them. And it was just really surprising to see how well it was laid out. And throughout the manga, each character gets their chance to shine in this harem. It's very good character building, relationship building. It's a very conclusive ending, and it's a lot of fun. The action scenes are great as well. This is a very surprising 2-volume series, and I highly recommend it if you're not a shoujo fan, because this is just a really funny action-packed manga that's a great bridge to your shonen reader. And here we are with volumes 11 to 15, so that completes the series for me in the omnibus format of High School Debut. So this finishes my buddy read with Marg Reads Manga. I had an absolute blast with this, but let me just say this about the ending. I thought the ending was super rushed and it was super uncharacteristic of what this whole manga was about. So the actual final volume of High School Debut is volume 13, and then when they did these omnibus volumes, they added in volumes 14 and 15, which added extra content to the story. And one of the extra content things was actually shelling out the ending and giving some more context to it. So my recommendation for any of you who are looking to read this series is basically read the manga up until like the last 2 pages and then stop, read volumes 14 and 15, and then come back. I know, it's just a mess and it shouldn't be like that, but here we are with it anyway. Yeah, the ending left something to be desired, but the journey was fantastic. I love our 2 main characters. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't drama for the sake of drama. It was just really great character building. The cast of characters were fantastic. I really enjoyed the funny scenarios, and this is a shoujo beat series I have no problem reading again. This last section here are all the single volumes that I read this month, either starting new series or continuing continuing ongoing series. And actually, a good part of this section was provided to me by the good folks over at Yen Press. Thank you guys for continuing to support the channel and allowing me to talk about your catalog of manga. So let's talk about one of my favorite reads this month, a total dark horse out of left field. I just couldn't believe how good this was, and it's Your Forma. This is like a dark mystery thriller cyberpunk series, a manga adaptation of a light novel that follows a group of people who dive into people's brains to discover their inner psyche and help solve mysteries. It's really intriguing. I love the art. I love the character design. I thought the manga adaptation did really well with the pacing, which is usually a big problem with this, but I love the premise. It's super interesting. Think Psycho-Pass meets ID Invaded. If you like either of those series, you're gonna love this one. I highly recommend it. I cannot wait for the second volume. Next up here is my second favorite new series read of the month, and that is Call the Name of the Night. This follows a girl who has an affliction that calls upon the night, and she spreads darkness all around her, and the story is about her teaming up with her mentor as they try to solve this illness. If you love Witch Hat Atelier, you will absolutely love this series. It was such a great first volume. Intriguing world, great characters, beautiful art. I cannot wait to see where this story goes. There's lots of interesting lore behind here, especially with our main character girl. I can't wait to see how she develops. It's just a really likable story with likable characters. This gets my highest recommendation from me. Everybody should be picking this up. Next up here is one of my favorite new series of 2022. We have Shadow's House Volume 3. Lots of great development in this volume. We get a lot of progression with the main story, which is exactly what I was saying this series needed to keep my interest, but of course it's a really dark premise with these living dolls who impersonate the feelings and emotions of their shadows who are created of soot. A really intriguing premise with a lot of lore. Emiliko as a main character is absolutely adorable, super funny, super innocent, and I'm really loving all the additions of the other characters as well. I cannot wait to see where this series goes. Next up is one of the most surprising volumes of this month, and that is Shy Volume 2. I had huge reservations about Volume 1. Yeah, it kind of gave me the feeling of My Hero Academia, but there were just many problems with the actual writing of the main character and the whole premise with the bad guy team versus the good guy team. But this volume does a great job to really help you get invested into the story. They really explain things clearly, and it helps kind of clear up some of the plot holes established in Volume 1. We get a lot of great character development with Shy, and of course the artwork is really awesome. I love that sketch type of feel that it has to it. We also have some new characters introduced in this volume, and I really do like the addition of the characters. I think they bring a lot to the story. So yes, I am 100% invested into Shy. If you were hesitant after Volume 1, give Volume 2 a shot. If you don't like Volume 2, then I think it's about time you drop the series. I'm a little bit late on the train here, but I finally got around to reading the copy that they sent me of Oshinoko Volume 1. This was just absolutely insane. I went into this series blind. I'm super glad that I did. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend just giving the first volume a shot. It's really weird, and at least in the first half of the manga, you're like, I don't think this is going to be anything special, but that back half of the volume really got me invested into the story. I don't really think of this as a volume 1. I think of this as a prologue to the main story. So if you go into reading this volume with that in mind, I think you're going to enjoy it a lot better, because if you think of it as a volume 1, you're going to be like, this is just really weird, and I don't really like the vibe of what's going on. So yes, highly recommend. I cannot wait to see how dark and twisted this is actually going to get. Next up here is a villainous manga. The villainess stands the heroes, playing the antagonist to support her faves. And the premise follows a girl who gets reincarnated into her favorite otome game, and she is the villainess, and her goal is to continue to fulfill her villainous role so that all of her favorite characters can continue living their life just as she played in the game. I really like the premise, and I think that it's really funny, and I like the interactions with all the characters, but my big problem with this manga is that it was super wordy, especially at the beginning, and it took me a while to get invested into the story. I understand that this is an adaptation of a light novel, but still, I mean, it was just so hard to get through some of those paragraphs. I really like the unpredictability of this story. It kind of takes a bunch of different turns, and it was a lot of fun. I liked how the volume ended, and it really got me invested into the rest of the story. So yes, it is definitely one that I do recommend. 7 out of 10. Next up is a volume 2 of a series I cannot stop singing high praises about, and that is So What's Wrong with Being Reborn as a Goblin. I didn't think think it could get much better than volume 1, but volume 2 actually topped it. We get even more into the world, the power system. It's just so creative, so unique, and I just absolutely love everything about this. There's a lot of great development on the political front, which was something they touched about in volume 1, but it was more about just getting the world set up, so I cannot wait to see where that goes. This is just such a fun, turn your brain off manga series, and I cannot highly recommend it enough. And here we are with Assorted Entanglements Volume 1. This is a girls' love series. And the story follows a late 20s office worker girl. She's been having bad luck with boys. One day she gets drunk, she ends up sleeping with the 18-year-old waitress at the bar, and they start their relationship. Really short chapters, really cute, but I think the big problem I had with this series was that it just moved way too fast. Their relationship just seemed a little bit unrealistic in my personal opinion, and in terms of their development as characters, it just really wasn't there for me. I'm gonna give it one more volume, but yeah, this is definitely one I have some red flags about. Only a few more volumes to go here. First up, we have volume 2 of Dawn of the Arcana by Ray Toma. For those of you who don't know what this series is about, it's a political romance drama series about two people from opposite countries who are at war with each other. They come together to create peace. But of course, there's no romantic interest at all, and there's a lot of political intrigue and darkness behind that fake relationship. Volume 1 was a little underwhelming, but volume 2 picked up the pace. I really got invested with the characters and what their motives were. It was great to see a lot of great development with the relationship, and I just can't wait to see how dark and crazy this story can get. So yes, Dawn of the Arcana is a classic shoujo beat series, and I can see why. Next up is Miss Miyazan Would Love to Get Closer to You Volume 3, 4-volume series, so we're almost done with this. I loved Volume 3. Great character development, great relationship development. It's super cute, super episodic, but it just flows so well. The cast of characters are great. This is just such a fun series. If you're looking for an easy rom-com read that's just really wholesome, this is one I recommend. Next up is Tsubaki Cho Lonely Planet Volume 2. Great stuff going on in this volume. Lots of great development with our main character. And actually, the plot hole that was in Volume 1 that I didn't necessarily like with one of the characters gets wrapped up here in volume 2, which is great, and then he becomes an essential part of the cast, which is really, really good. So yes, all of the concerns from volume 1 I had get wrapped up here in volume 2. I can't wait to see where this keeps going. I also just love the dynamic of our main characters, and I really think the main character, man, is total husbando material. Next up here are 2 volumes of Higurashi When They Cry. I read the first volume physically. The second volume finishes this arc, and I read that on scans. I very much enjoyed this mystery thriller, really intriguing with this village and these murders and this guy trying to solve said mystery. But is it something I want to keep going with? No, I do want to read it, but maybe not right now, but I did enjoy it. 9 out of 10 actually. This is an older manga with older manga style artwork from the early 2000s, but it's really, really enjoyable. I like the character design. It's really, really fun. And last up here, I read volume 1 of Chojin X. I will not be talking about this right now. I plan to do a whole video on it with a giveaway courtesy of Right Stuff Anime, so get ready for that video next week. And that is it for my manga reading log for the month of March. Some great reads. April is getting off to a slow start because I had some really big things happen in my life, but hopefully once things start to settle down, I can get to reading and hopefully get to 50 volumes again. As always, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to hit that like button, tap the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so that you know when more of my videos come out, and I will see you in the next one. Take care now. Bye-bye.